So, Dave, so now we're live. You nervous?
I'm
No?
not.
Okay, good.
I'm
good.
with you.
Because I am. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, well, it's cool we get a few minutes to hop online early.
Yes.
And while people are getting the notifications on their phone and on their computer and interrupting them from their busy work at their job and so forth and saying, don't worry about that spreadsheet or bringing those customers their food right now.
Doesn't matter.
Just stop what you're doing, put the food down, put it on a warmer, and hit the alert on your phone and connects to this.
We're assuming
So-
they have warmers in their office somewhere?
Well, I was thinking of the restaurant employee. I'd switched venues.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry, I didn't
I was
like.
in the cube in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I would love to work in this cubicle that has a
Oh,
warmer.
it has a warmer. I used to have a coffee warmer when I had a corporate job.
I could see that.
Yeah. It kind of worked.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad.
Okay.
At least the plug-in ones, the USB ones, the kind of
No, that's not enough.
a little. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
enough
it's not.
juice.
I think that's just a fire hazard.
It probably is. So for those that are tuning in right now, they're probably realizing this is not Shane Schlussman.
It's not Shane.
He did not get a mask or anything. We have a new guest with us this week, our newest pastor, Dr. Dave DeMasters.
Yes.
And what are you the doctor of?
They call me the doctor of being not Shane.
Okay, all right.
That's it. I have
Wow, they're giving degrees for that?
They are now. They are now.
It's now a thing.
I have a doctor of ministry degree
Okay.
in counseling.
Yeah, all
That's
right.
what that is.
Okay. Did that require translating Greek text to so forth?
That
and-
was my Master of Divinity. My
Okay.
MDiv degree is where you do all of that.
Okay.
So yes, I did that.
Yeah.
But when you get to the other degree, it's really just in that area. Whatever.
I used to see Pastor Jeremy Waltz
Right.
just crunching Greek into English and so forth. And he would hate it. I'd go up behind him and you know somebody's already done that, right?
That's right. We've got multiple translations that are, you can go to the store and buy that.
You don't need to do that anymore. But he would always just give me an evil
Yeah.
look and so
Yeah,
forth.
that's
But
right.
I hope he's watching. Hi, Jeremy. Hope you're
Jeremy,
watching.
shout
So we're getting the indication that it's 3 o'clock now. So for those that were tuning in at the right time, unlike us, at the appropriate time of 3 o'clock when this was scheduled, I am Jim Washut, Communications Director here at West End Assembly of God, and we are joined by our pastor, Dr. Dave DeMasters, who delivered our sermon this past week, week number 4, the final week in our Mist series, Your Life is But a Mist. Comes from James 4:14. Did I recall that right?
You did.
All right, that could have been my job right there.
That was it.
If I'd gotten that wrong.
You keep the job.
Good. At least for now. Maybe not by the end of this half an hour, but we'll see. But as always, for those of you that are tuning in who caught this past week's sermon, we would love to get your questions for Dave. Take advantage of this time when you got his ear in his mouth for the next 30 or some odd minutes to use the comments area to ask questions that you might have. And even if you didn't miss the sermon, even if you didn't miss the sermon, I completely said that wrong. Even if you did miss the sermon, if you still got a question, feel free to ask it. We would love to hear from Dave on it. So Dave, this being your first time on the camera here and relatively new to WEAG, I think it'd be awesome if you gave people we'll start with, we have a half an hour, so maybe a 28-minute bio.
28-minute bio.
And just tell people about your background.
Yeah, that's right.
What brought you here and everything.
28 minutes.
Sure, 28.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I am actually a native Richmonder. I was born downtown at Stewart Circle Hospital and spent the entirety of my life up through high school, graduated from high school right here in RVA. I went away for Bible college for 4 years and met my wife, got married. We've been married ever since, coming up on 35 years that we've been together. I know I don't look like maybe I've been married 35 years. She looks like she's been married 35 minutes. She's just fresh. Anyway, so then I went to seminary, and we talked a minute ago about that degree period. Graduated with my Master of Divinity degree, and then got a doctorate in counseling, and then entered ministry. So that was 25 years ago or something.
Very good.
So I've senior pastored, I've church planted, and now here with the great folks at West End Assembly of God.
Very good. And you've known Shane for some time.
I have known Shane for some time. I've actually known Shane longer than I've known my wife.
Okay, really? All right.
Yes.
And how's that?
We met, I am a couple of years older than Shane, and so we met. His church had a summer internship program. Like we have an internship program here at WEAG.
Yeah.
His church had an internship program for pastors, and I was in that internship and met Shane when he was in high school, working at the camp as the lifeguard.
Oh.
So I was a we called them preacher boys back then. I was a preacher boy, and he was a lifeguard, and we met and hit it off right away.
Yeah.
As you know, and the folks know, he's like a powder keg of excitement and passion for the Lord, and so we just hit it off right away. And
very good.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for that sort of insight into your past and what has brought you here and so forth. Another thing that viewers deserve some insight into, in case they missed this past week's sermon, you got sort of a 1 minute or so synopsis of what you talked about this past Sunday.
Absolutely. So this past week was really about purpose, discovering our purpose, recognizing that God has made us. He was very intentional in bringing us into this world, that it was for a purpose. And then through the course of the sermon, we kind of worked through what might that great work be that God is calling me to in my life, which all kind of culminated at the end of the service with us offering for folks to take the next step in their journey into whatever that might be for them. For somebody, it might be a really small step. For other folks, they've been in a great work for a while, and so it's advancing that. Yeah, it was a good time together as a family, kind of studying the Word and seeing what God wants for us.
Absolutely. And for those of you watching, hey, we all wonder that question at some point, that big proverbial universal question, what is the meaning of life? And you kind of addressed that this past Sunday. So if you missed the sermon, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on our website, all three places. You can pull that up and you can re-watch that, and I highly encourage you to do so. But in the meantime, if you have any questions along those lines, what's the meaning of life? Now's your time to ask the person who knows. So he's got all the answers right here.
We're going to ask the Lord. We're going to ask Jesus. Good. He's the one who knows.
So again, use the comment area to go ahead and ask your questions. And Dave, we've got something to start off with.
Super.
And one of the things you touched on, well, of course, the title of the sermon was Just Say Yes. The opposite of Shane's Just Say No that he spoke of the week before. But how do we determine the right things to say yes to?
That's a great question.
That's a toughie.
Yeah, that's a hard one. So I believe when it comes down to the decisions in our life and where we invest our time, we want to make sure that we are choosing correctly. It's very easy to be involved in the wrong things. And by that, I don't necessarily mean sinful. Those are clearly wrong. But we can be involved in things that just don't have any real value to them. And for those of you that were watching Sunday, I held up my smartphone and I said, you know, how much time do we spend on this little gizmo that really isn't meaningful time at all?
Digital distractions.
That's right. Yeah. You know, that's what it is. I'm not saying that cell phones are evil. I have that. I need it to live my life. But so I think for us, finding those things that can last, that have meaning beyond even this life into the next is really the key. And so if we evaluate our life from that perspective, what can I do that has eternal meaning? That's where I want to try to say that yes. Is in that area, to make sure that I have the right amount of yeses there.
Okay, so looking for the eternal meaning in the choices that are before us. All right, very good. What about those times when you just feel uncertain? When you feel like you're starting to cue into like what your purpose is, but it's not fully developed, it's not fully formed. What do you do in those moments?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for most of us, we really don't know all the big answers in our life. God usually gives us small answers. Like, hey, what's the next thing that I should do? And he'll give us that, and there'll be a revelation that way. And if we walk in that step, and then when we're in that place, if we just say yes to the next thing the Lord is saying, then if that's our pattern, we don't miss the big thing that's way down the road. I know in my own life, if God had told me from the beginning some of the things that I would face along the way, I might have run the other way. I might have been like, no, I can't. It's too much.
Yeah.
That's I can't imagine. You know? And so God gives us this revelation in an incremental fashion. And so my encouragement to folks is take the next step. Whatever that next step is that's right in front of you, that's the step to take.
So don't get caught up looking so far down the road. Just
Correct.
Okay.
So many people, honestly, are just waiting for some big, massive call of God.
Yeah.
And as soon as the heavens open and the angels sing, oh, that was a weak attempt at singing or being angelic. But anyway.
Should have had Nikki do the singing part.
Nikki could have done that.
Nikki.
That's exactly right. You know, they're waiting for that, and trumpets and all of these things. And listen, there are times when that happens in our life, and it's a great moment. But more frequently, it's saying yes incrementally. It's saying yes to what's in front of me. It's saying yes for something that's 30 days long or 60 days long.
Yeah.
Rather than the just big grand scheme. And then the accumulation of that becomes that great work that we talked about from Nehemiah.
Yeah. Well, no doubt some folks that are hearing what you're saying about saying yes to that which is eternal, and that's what drives our purpose and God's purpose, no doubt wonder, well, what about everything else that we have to do?
Yeah.
So what might be your guidance and response into, like, do we only pursue that which is eternal, and what do we do about everything else, especially if we're in a job and so forth right now that we can't leave? But like if we're, say, and I'm just going to pick up occupation off the top of my head, so no, I'm not meaning anything with this, but if you're a landscaper, you know, you mow that lawn, that grass is going to grow back up. That's not an eternal work, so to speak.
No, that's right.
You know, it comes right back. But so what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's great. In my world, there is this verse that is very impactful for me. Whatsoever you do, do it to the glory of God. And so we don't have to be, like, you don't have to be engaged in ministry for what you're doing to have value. You just have to do the things in your life as unto the Lord. And that becomes a valuable moment. So if we take the landscaper, when landscapers are working, if I'm going to cut the grass, trim the bushes, do the work that's there, maybe build a beautiful garden, if I do that as unto the Lord, to the best of my ability, that becomes something that's honoring to Him. Certainly in our minds, we tend to think of, well, if I'm, you know, in ministry full time, or if on Sunday morning I stand up and sing like Nikki does, or whatever, and I'm on display with my gifts, those are eternal things.
Yeah. And
those can be eternal things. But so can landscaping for the glory of God be a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
We just use every opportunity for the Lord to use us in whatever way that is. And I'll also say, frequently along the way, those are the folks that have the greater impact in someone's life. So, you know, in a professional ministry situation, frequently people have to come to you inside the church building. A landscaper is out with people every day. And so if we think about a landscaper who's living for Jesus, looking for the opportunity in his or her life to share their faith, they're out where people are, and they're going to the people. Sharing your faith, being an impact-oriented person in that dynamic becomes the great work.
There you go. Okay. So no doubt, if they keep doing landscaping as if unto the Lord, you're going to have a lot of customers that are going to wonder, what makes you different?
Yeah, sure. That's right.
And there comes out the message,
exactly
right?
Right.
All right.
Exactly right.
If, Dave, if our purpose is, if this purpose we're talking about, our purpose to do great works is so important to God, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, why is it such a lengthy, often painful, sometimes frustrating process of discovering what that purpose is? I often joke, hey, I'm 46, and sometimes I'm still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do when I grow up.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I would say in this regard that it is frequently in the process of discovery that we experience the greatest parts of our relationship with God.
Okay.
Here's what I mean by that. If God just popped us right into the middle of full knowledge of what His will would be for our life, we would miss all the baby steps along the way. I think of it this way. My dad was a semi-pro baseball player. He got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
And so he knew his way
Nice.
around baseball and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so my dad taught me how to throw and how to catch and how to field grounders and all of that stuff. So the great time that I had in learning with my dad, building that relationship with him, experiencing him, leading me, teaching me, Dave, here's how you position the glove when you want to catch a grounder. Here's how you get your body in front of the ball so that if it takes a bad hop, you can block it.
Mm-hmm.
Being in that close proximity with my dad while he was teaching built a wonderful relationship. And if we bypass all of that because we get a grandiose call of God, we don't have the joy of the journey.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that God makes it fruit that's out of our reach. You know, that I see that apple and I want it, but I can't reach it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that. I just mean that there's a journey that we go through. And part of the joy in the journey is the presence of the Lord and the relationship that develops with Him. So I think there are times in our lives when God gives us a very clear proclamation of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a service and God calls us or whatever and speaks to us very, very powerfully about something we should do. Those are amazing moments.
Yeah.
But it's all of those moments in walking with the Lord that builds the texture of that relationship. And I think that's why He doesn't just say, you know, as it were, here's your life plan, Dave.
Yeah.
I've written it out for you. Just follow it. That's not how it is. It's more, take my hand, son. Let's walk through what this looks like.
Gosh, you're preaching patience.
I'm not preaching. I try not to use the word patience.
I'm hearing patience.
That's
Be
you.
patient. That's
That's
a
right.
hard thing to do.
It is so hard. Patience is, yes.
Us fast. I mean, you mentioned mobile phone earlier. We're so used to now. I have information. I have the world's information at my fingertips.
Right.
I can go through fast food. I can drive through. I can just order Amazon now, and I just
right.
have it.
That's right.
Wow, that's a tough thing. So, given sometimes the toughness of recognizing and pursuing God's purpose in our life, is it possible to actually go through life without fulfilling the purpose God created for us?
That's an excellent question. One of the passages that I alluded to in the sermon on Sunday, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, talks about our life and that over the course of our life as we're living, we're amassing eternal weight and glory, my term. But what the scripture calls that is gold, silver, precious stones. We're accumulating those types of works, okay? At the same time, there are also in that 1 Corinthians 3 passage, there's wood, hay, and stubble, okay? So where we invest our life can be in those things that are precious or those things that when fire is applied for them, to them, that they perish, that they turn into ash or whatever. So I always, in my mind, I think to myself, is it possible to miss the will of God? And I believe the answer to that is yes. I believe that we have free will as people, that God has woven that into us at our creation. And because we have free will, we can say, God, talk to the hand. We can just say no. And in those cases when we say no, we're kind of missing the mark of what it is that God wants. He wants us here, we're going here. And so we miss that mark. The beauty of God is, when we miss the mark, that we can confess that, we can repent of that, and we can get back on the track. So I would say the answer to the question is yes, we can miss, and yes, we can redeem and come back to that.
Okay.
So there's never a moment that is too late while we're drawing breath. We can redeem and get on the path. So if there's somebody out there in this world, the digital world, and right now you're thinking to yourself, I've said no to God any number of times, and I've backed away. It's okay that you've done that. It's not over. We just stop and redirect, and we say yes.
So we don't have to panic that ship has sailed.
We don't have to panic.
God's going to put us right back on
That's
board.
exactly right. He will do that.
What a beautiful story. A beautiful story. And thank you for that encouragement for all of our viewers. And again, to our viewers, if you have questions for Dave, now's your time to ask them while you're live. Well, it's the best time. You can ask them anytime. We'll take your questions anytime. But certainly now is a great time to go ahead and ask them. And Dave, we've got some more for you here. in that during the sermon, you had the audience engage a number of times and verbalize, I am here on purpose. I am on purpose. And I didn't get the sense that that was a spontaneous decision on your part, that that was very intentional. What difference, I mean, why did you do that? And I assume it makes a difference in our lives when we verbalize that sort of a statement.
Yeah, it does. It does. Over the course of the sermon, we were reciting words like, I'm not accidental, I'm not incidental, I'm not inconsequential, I'm on purpose. And doing that, what it does for us in our heart and in our spirit is it gives us the opportunity to say about ourselves what God has said over us. And so we come into agreement because God didn't just accidentally have us happen. There's an intentionality for him in our being here. And so when we say to ourselves, I'm here on purpose, I am here for a purpose, we're actually agreeing with God in what he wants to do and why we're here. And it gives us the opportunity to rise up in our faith and engage in a greater way in whatever that mission is.
Okay.
So it's a very powerful dynamic when we do that. I mean, think about when our children, our little ones, when our babies come into the world, how we'll sing over them. And just the sound of the voice. They can't understand the content, but they can understand the tone, right? And so there's something that happens in that. When my kids are older and my son or my daughter would fall down and skin their knee and I would grab them up in my arms and I would start to talk to them, they would calm down. There's something about hearing that can bring comfort and encouragement and hope. So I say to folks out there in the world, when you're doubting, when you're struggling, these are things that you recite, is what you know to be true about yourself from the Lord. I have a purpose. I was created for a reason. God has work that he wants to do through me. And this can fight off doubt. And when we're worried about what's happening.
Those are great words of encouragement. Thank you for that. I want to kind of jump towards the end of your sermon, because as you mentioned at the end, you made a call out for people to jump into their purpose. And you very much emphasized the fact that this isn't something that we have to wait to do. We don't necessarily have to go to school for, get instruction for, be trained in. We can jump into God's great work right now where we're at this time with what we have. What is the significance of that? And how is it possible that God's able to utilize us, no matter who we are, what our talents are, what our education is, and so forth, to impact the eternal?
When we're living our life, God has us in a position so that he can use us. We mentioned this earlier, where there are many times in our life when we might be on a wrong path, okay? And as we move to the right path, even as we're making that transition, we have the opportunity to be used in that moment, wherever we are, whatever we're doing. We talked earlier about, ministry work versus non-ministry work. So many times, as an illustration, when I'm out in the community, if I'm having lunch, I'm having dinner, the waiter, the waitress, they're going to take care of you and your meal and all of that kind of stuff. And so out in my life, just doing the normal things that I do, I'll say to my waiter or my waitress, hey, in a few minutes, we're going to pray for our meal, and I'd love to pray for you. Do you have a prayer request that I can pray for?
Okay.
I've been doing this for many years. And it's always interesting to me, the most hardened person, folks that might have tattoos or whatever it is, you would anticipate these are not people that would potentially be open to that they'll stop and they'll say, yes, my car just broke down. Would you pray for me? Or whatever that is. And we're able to pray for them in that moment. I've had waiters, I've had waitresses break down crying when they heard the prayer, when they heard us as a group praying for them or whatever. Here's my point, is the work that God can do in us and through us isn't predicated on great moments in our lives. It's predicated on us thinking about the great work all along the way and joining God in the work that he's doing. And so it doesn't have to be the mountaintop. It can be in the valley. It can be wherever we are
Yeah.
that God can utilize us and we can join him in the work that he's doing.
Yeah. It's so counter to how we might naturally think. Off the top of my head, I think of like how Gabriel started with what, 10,000 troops?
Sure.
And God whittled it down to
Right.
300. It was like, no, you don't have too many. You don't have too few, you have too many. And then the people on the mountainside that needed to eat, they took the lunch of a child
Right.
and fed thousands.
That's
And so
right.
forth. Are there other examples
Yeah.
that
Sure.
like that?
Sure.
Where God actually is like, no, you actually have too much.
Yeah.
Let's slim this back,
That's
and
exactly
I'll show
right.
you what I
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah, I know that there have been times like I was involved in a church years ago, and we had gone into this expansion program, and things were going fine in the expansion program, and then God turned the corner with us, and we started to lose people, and it was like, oh, this is awful, this is terrible, we don't want this to happen, this is not what we want. And what it did in that moment, as an illustration, is it caused the people that were there to rally together in a greater way. And so in our church dynamic, as our attendance was diminishing, our giving was increasing because people became more engaged. The folks that were there wanted to be there. And so even though in the natural world it looked like, oh man, actually in the spiritual world it was like, oh man.
Yeah, okay.
And then eventually those two things came in alignment.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that church in decline is a great thing. I'm not saying that. I am saying that, just as you have mentioned, there are times when we look at things in the natural and we think, oh, it looks great, and maybe it's not. Or we think it looks terrible, but maybe it's great, because we're not looking at it the right way. We're not seeing it from the Lord's perspective and what he can do, will do, or maybe even wants to do in this situation. So, folks, here's what I'm saying. Don't judge your circumstances and come to some final conclusion. We ask the Lord, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? I know I can look back in my own life at some of the deepest times of the deepest hurt in my life, and I can look at that a decade later, and I can say, wow, God used that to fashion me into a better servant, into a stronger person of faith. And I would never want to go through that, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But God's used it in a big way in my life.
Yeah.
So we don't just look for the mountains. We look for God wherever we are.
Such encouragement. You're just downloading all sorts of encouragement. I appreciate it.
Be encouraged.
Yes. So for those of you watching, if you're being encouraged right now, please, when this video is done, this is very much shareable. Share it out. And we'll be uploading it to YouTube later too, so you can share out that version to people that don't have a Facebook account. So I want to get to, you then highlighted that great works starts in the local church level as well. And there are many times when someone's involvement in the local church is quite obvious. You mentioned the folks that are on the platform singing, playing instruments and so forth. It's very obvious kind of how they're participating in the great work. But there, you pointed out, what was it, 275-ish people are needed to pull off what we do here every Sunday. And then you add in all the other week activities, and it's probably tops 500 easily, I'm sure. So what are perhaps some of the less obvious but still very impactful, great work things that people can participate in the local church?
Absolutely. That's a great question. When we think about all that it takes to do church at the size and scope of what we're doing it here at West End Assembly of God, it takes so many people to pull it off, and so few of them stand on a platform or hold a microphone. And so from the first moment in the parking lot, we have people who are saying and doing things and welcoming people and have a smile on their face and directing traffic with gusto. And then when they go to the parking spot for visitors or whatever that is, there are people that are there. We have cart drivers that drive carts and bring people in from the parking lot. I think the point is, anything that we do that's adding to what the local church does is partnering in the work. If I can use an illustration. So there may be people that can't run out and do something in the parking lot. They physically can't do it. Perhaps you're an online person and you can't participate that way because you're in Seoul, Korea. Hello, Seoul, Korea. Wait, Or would we be on in Seoul, Korea? Would
Maybe
they filter
not
that?
live. I'm
Maybe
not sure the
not
time
live.
difference,
Yeah,
but certainly
right.
later.
That's right.
We're
But anyway,
global. We're global.
whatever that is, you might not be able to participate that way. Here's how you could participate. Perhaps you could get on a prayer team for us. Perhaps you could be involved in giving at the church. We've got folks who sit out in our out in the congregation in chairs, and they aren't doing things, but they're participating with their presence. If you're in the RVA area, you can come in here and you don't have to stand on a stage. Just being here is an encouragement to us. And so there's so many ways in which the great work that's going on at West End Assembly of God is carried out not just by people on a stage or on a payroll, but by all of us that give of ourselves to the great work of the assembly.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't have to necessarily be one of the 22 players on the field of the football team, because you spoke about the Cowboys.
That's right. I did speak about
He
the
is a Cowboys fan.
who then lost.
Yes, their game was but a miss. Sorry, I had to bring that back.
It was
up.
100% a miss.
Yes, it was a miss and a miss. It was both. But congratulations to the Redskins for pulling off a win.
Sure.
For all the local RVA. I had to.
Go Redskins.
You know, Shane gives me grief as a Pats fan with
does
the
he?
Eagles win last year.
I
So
see. Yeah.
Our viewers are used to this. For those that tune in every
You're
week.
worthy of ridicule as a Pats fan, or our frustration because you guys win so much that when you don't win, we can all rejoice. That's bad theology.
I guess.
I think it's bad. Anyway, sports metaphors. What are we?
We can joke around about it.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Last question is, you were just talking about all the different ways that we can be involved in the local church. And I think some folks think that the appeal of a local church for people to volunteer is can be selfish. It's all about us, right? Come help us be what we are as a church.
Right.
But the reality is there's such a blessing to the participant, is there not?
Yeah,
so
that's exactly right.
How does serving in local church improve our welfare, our happiness, our lives?
Yeah, anytime that we're giving back with talents or gifts or abilities that we've been giving, it's fulfilling. We feel when we're walking in that purpose, it speaks to us. It's like a tuning fork. When you hit the tuning fork and it vibrates and you have that perfect pitch in your ear. When we as people are engaged in what God is doing, it's that perfect pitch, that perfect sound. And again, it doesn't have to be a big thing that you're doing on a stage. It's just you doing you in the local church, whatever that looks like, whatever a person's gifts or abilities are, being present. All of that creates the harmony that is a grand local church.
Nice.
Great work.
Very good. Well, thank you for that, Dave. So we're on purpose. Say yes to it.
Yes.
Say yes to it. Don't worry about figuring it all out. Just take the next step.
Right.
And do so at your local church will be fulfilling and uplifting, and you'll move on to the next step from there.
Absolutely.
Very good. So we're starting a new series next week, which we won't talk about right now because it's a big surprise that we're going to leave for Shane to unveil for everyone. It's going to be another very impactful, very important 4-week series. So we invite you all to participate in that and join us for that on site at 10 a.m. because we're staying with 10 a.m. going forward. 10 a.m. on site or online. Catch that message from Pastor Shane this coming Sunday. And we want to thank our viewers for taking the time to join us right now. And thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Yes, sir.
With this and answering these questions.
Yeah,
See you as well. And if folks have questions, can they email you?
Absolutely. Dave@weag.org.
Okay, WEAG.org. There you go. All right, so just shoot him some email.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, take care.